It is one of the most recognizable geographic landmarks on Earth. Millions of tourists visit the Rock of Gibraltar every year, snapping photos of the Mediterranean coastline without ever knowing the name of the man who gave this landmark its identity. The word Gibraltar is a Spanish corruption of the Arabic Jabal Tariq, the mountain of Tariq. It honors an outsider who crossed the sea and orchestrated a victory that defied every mathematical probability of 8th century warfare. This map shows the natural defense of the Iberian Peninsula. For centuries, the region operated like an island fortress. The narrow, treacherous waters of the strait acted as a moat, separating Spain and North Africa, deterring any serious amphibious assault. Inside that fortress sat King Roderic. He was an 80-year-old tyrant whose rule was defined by massive wealth and a fatal assumption of safety. Because the kingdom hadn't faced a foreign invasion in generations, Roderic focused on hoarding treasure and enforcing absolute obedience, while the actual defenses of his realm were left to decay. Geographic isolation had created a sense of total invincibility. Roderic assumed his position was unassailable, leaving his kingdom vulnerable to any force motivated enough to attempt the crossing. That arrogance turned into a political crisis when Roderic demanded the daughter of one of his noblemen, Count Julian, remain at the royal palace. Julian didn't simply comply. He rescued his daughter and fled in the dead of night to the court of the Muslim governor in North Africa, Musa bin Nusayr, offering to hand over the keys to the coastal forts if the Muslims would help him depose the tyrant. Governor Musa agreed, but he chose a highly unconventional leader for the mission. He bypassed his veteran nobleman and handed command of the expedition to Tariq ibn Ziyad, a Berber who had begun his life as a slave before earning his freedom through military service. Tariq's resources were almost non-existent. He crossed with a mere 7,000 foot soldiers. They had no horses and limited supplies, landing on a hostile shore defended by an empire that could call upon tens of thousands of heavily armored cavalry. On paper, this was a suicide mission. Tariq was leading a small unit of unmounted infantry into a direct confrontation with one of the most entrenched military powers in Europe. As soon as the landing was complete, the reality of the situation hit the troops. They were standing in a foreign land, vastly outnumbered, with no local allies and a massive enemy force marching toward them. To prevent his men from retreating in fear, Tariq issued a single, shocking, and irreversible order: burn the ships. He forced his men to watch as their only means of escape was reduced to ash in the harbor. He gathered the survivors on the beach and told them their new reality. The sea was behind them, the enemy was ahead, and the only path back to their families was to win. Their first test came when a local man named Imam approached the camp. He begged Tariq to rescue his daughter, Bilqis, who had been kidnapped by Roderic's regional general, Theudemir. Tariq led his foot soldiers into their first engagement. Despite being out-armored, they used their mobility to dismantle Theudemir's cavalry units, rescuing the girl and proving to themselves that the Visigoth armor wasn't invincible. Removing the option of retreat changed the physics of the battlefield. By tethering their first engagement to the rescue of a local citizen, Tariq ensured his men fought with the desperation of people who had no other world to return to. When Roderic heard of the defeat, he mobilized everything. He marched south with a force reaching as high as 100,000 men, an army designed to simply crush the invaders under its weight. This diagram shows the scale of the mismatch. Tariq faced a 10-to-1 numerical disadvantage, his light infantry standing against a wall of heavy Spanish cavalry. Furthermore, Roderic arrived in a gold-encrusted chariot, while Tariq's impoverished men fought with sharpened wooden staffs. The lines met in a collision of steel against wood. Knowing there were no ships waiting for them, the Muslim infantrymen held their ground with a focus that broke the Visigoth charges, pulling riders from their mounts and holding the front through sheer exhaustion. The massive Visigoth army began to splinter. Seeing his numerical advantage fail to break the line, Roderic immediately abandoned his gilded chariot and fled the battlefield, leaving his massive army to collapse in total disarray. This victory showed that a massive numerical advantage is a liability when the larger force is apathetic and the smaller one is fully committed. Tariq had systematically dismantled an empire, using a force that shouldn't have survived the first hour. Instead of a simple change in leadership, the conquerors dismantled the feudal system, stripping land from the wealthy elite and returning it to the local farmers who had been taxed into poverty for generations. The occupation brought a level of stability the region hadn't seen in centuries. Peace was established, and the local population was granted legal protections and the right to practice their own faith. This unlikely military victory became the foundation for the golden age of Al-Andalus. Over the next few centuries, the city of Córdoba grew into a global center of learning. While the rest of Europe was largely illiterate, this region built paved roads, street lighting, and some of the largest libraries in the world. The architectural legacy of this era remains visible in the intricate geometry and golden mosaics of the Great Mosque, representing a society that invested its wealth into science, mathematics, and public works, rather than royal vanity. Tariq ibn Ziyad began as an invader, but he became the catalyst for a period of scientific and cultural progress that eventually helped pull Europe out of the Dark Ages. But history rarely rewards its most effective leaders. At the height of his influence, Tariq was suddenly recalled from Spain to the imperial capital in Damascus. A new caliph, Suleiman, had taken power. He was a paranoid ruler who viewed popular generals as direct threats to his authority. The man who delivered an entire peninsula and its royal treasury to the caliphate was stripped of his rank, imprisoned, and left to die in absolute poverty. Today, the Rock of Gibraltar stands as a permanent fixture on the edge of the Mediterranean. While the politicians of his time tried to erase Tariq from the record, his name is literally carved into the geography of the world, a monument to the commander who burned his ships to achieve the impossible.